let me put in my disclosure here, I don't own any securities in that and no investment recommendation, but they can't find the bank accounts. Appears to have been fraud. So Enron style fraud apparently being alleged. I have to say alleged because obviously I don't know. The Financial Times had been on this for years actually, and the various short sellers. There was a period when short selling was banned by the exchange on the request of the company. Um, and it's amazing that the auditors didn't uncover that earlier. This time around, it was the auditors saying, "Hey, we can't confirm any of these numbers." So, in any case, beyond that, lots of political news over the last 24 hours, and obviously everybody listening might have their own views. Relevance is really how it impacts the election, and not so much how we want it to be impacted, but how it will impact it. And of course, we don't know, surveys can be wrong and all that. One of the places I've been following is the prediction markets. And the prediction markets are not perfect either. I'd say these are small exchanges because they want to stay out of regulation. I have this agreement in predicted you can take a position, but the overall position size, I believe, is not allowed to be more than $850, and then they limit the number of participants per contract to something like 5,000. And so that in itself can distort the outcomes. But you still see trends, you still see other things. The reason why prediction markets are worth in general is because when people put money down, they may actually have an opinion, or except of course when you put very little money down, you might just put it down for politics to make a point, right? To distort these markets. Now there are also British betting markets. Sometimes we look at those as well. But right now, looking at the prediction market, the odds of a win by the by President Trump have come down significantly, and of Joe Biden have increased. Um, there is a professor at Berkeley who's just published a study on politics during pandemics and says the incumbent is usually suffering quite severely during pandemics because there's a belief that the government cannot take care of it. And I'm not talking about anything specifics here that President Trump did. This is broadly studying dozens of pandemics that, generally speaking, the public isn't happy. And apparently, the folks who are most influenced are the young folks, the young voters, because their neurons are still developing in their brain, and so they tend to lose trust in public institutions during that period, with a lasting impact. And so that's just something to keep in mind. But also to keep in mind is that not only is the prediction market now leaning towards the Democrats, but the same thing is with the Senate. The Senate odds are increasing, have been increasing significantly of late. That the Democrats will be heading the Senate. Now, they will not have a filibuster majority, it seems, and Biden does believe in the filibuster. And the reason why those things are relevant is not whether you love one guy or the other, but it is relevant because when you have a lot of power concentrated, you get a lot of things done. Most notably, got a lot of spending done. Now, you could argue you got a lot of spending done in recent weeks as well, but of course, that's water under the bridge. Don't tell that to the grandkids that have to pay for the debt. But on that note, I think I've mentioned that Powell has said that the way they shrink the balance sheet is by having GDP grow. So as a percentage of GDP, the balance sheet will come down. So that's same idea as we have with the debt. New definitions are being used for many of these things. By the way, since I'm with the prediction market, the vice presidential betting is on Kamala Harris, and that's obviously relevant because of the age of Biden. Same thing, why it's relevant that Pence is the vice president, the running mate here for President Trump. All right, today is what's called quadruple witching. Lots of derivative contracts expire. Some have expired this morning, some this afternoon. That historically can contribute to some odd moves in the markets. Last decade, that hasn't been as much the case, but never underestimate that. And so when you see an interpretation of why stocks are moving, take that with a grain of salt when you have an expiration like this, because a lot of things maybe just moving things around at just a few minutes ago, there was a major fix, for example, in the foreign exchange markets. Depending on the positioning, you can have some jerky moves as people do adjust. In the currency space, before I wrap it up, Australian dollar is the strongest currency in the G10, up 54 basis points. The weakest is the sterling. The sterling was yesterday also the weakest. Sterling is down 31 basis points right now, and the yen is kind of in the lower end of the pack. Are still up 11 basis points, so the dollar is broadly weaker. It's a risk on feel. International markets are up around a percent, a little less. Euro Stoxx 50 is up a percent even. China was up 1.3%. That is it for me today, and have a great weekend. Be safe out there, and talk to you on Monday.